SNAFU'd is a podcast that contains adult themes and language. Listener discretion is advised.
Hey guys, welcome to SNAFU'd, where the situation's normal, all fucked up. This is the podcast where we tell you true stories of true crime, true mysteries, and truly fucked up shit that happens every day, and then we just forget about it. I'm Shannon.
And I'm Corey, and thank you guys for coming back for... Are we on episode 9 already?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, look at us. Almost in double digits, but thank you guys for coming back. We're glad to have you here.
Yeah. I'm trying to see you through all this smoke in the freaking bedroom where we set up all our mics and stuff, because me and Corey decided to try and podcast early in the morning for once. So I was like, all right, let's do a brunch thing. Let's have breakfast. I'm going to cook bacon and all that nonsense. And we're going to have mimosas. So, drinks get you a little loose. And instead did not realize I filled the entire house with smoke.
Oh, you didn't open the windows in this room either, so that didn't help.
Well, why would they come here?
Because it's a house. The smoke has nowhere to go. It's just going to fill every place.
So we're having fun trying to podcast already, I guess. But, we just wanted to put out there that lately we've been getting a lot of interaction with a bunch of other podcasters, and it's been really fun and exciting, meeting other people who don't always want to do kind of the exact stories like we do. They have other interests, but getting to know more people, trying to put their voices out there has been really fun, and actually I feel happy and warm about it. They're all really interesting people.
Yeah, all the podcasters that we've been talking to, like Pod Full of Sunshine, The Ladies of Strange, have all been very, very helpful in getting us started, moving our name out there, so people are listening to us now. Yeah. It's been a very interesting time.
And I love the stories that they tell, because, Ladies of Strange, they give me good spooky stories, and, Pod Full of Sunshine, fellow Floridians, get to almost fill me in on all the stuff going on that I just don't care to listen in the news right now. I can't bring myself to open it up, so I let them tell me, and they break it to me what's going on.
A little bit easier that way.
Yeah. We were just thinking, because we were meeting all these really interesting people, that when we told stories, it was mostly of people who were interesting, and that's the only reason they managed to stay in history. Not so much the killers and murderers that sometimes we talk about, but the mysterious side of things, where people lead these lives that are so unique or different that you can't help but remember them and want to talk about it. So I started thinking about that, and, we meet those people every single day. Who's the most interesting person Corey?
Well, for me, it's definitely my father. I know that sounds super corny, but, my father was born in the 50s and, graduated high school in the 70s, didn't go to college, and basically self-taught himself mechanical and electrical engineering. And through that, accomplished a number of different things before he went to retirement. And my father just always knows a whole lot of random things and just super self-taught. And to me, that's just really interesting.
He's like a whiz kid, people that can teach themselves stuff.
Considering I'm the one that has to go to school for decades, and he didn't, it definitely makes me think differently.
Yeah, can't he do some crazy measurement thing?
Yeah, he when he would take engineering students that would show up at his job, and they would be using some sort of tool to measure a length of something. And they'd measure, and my father would use a ruler and get closer to where they need to be than they would. And you're just going to prove them that, sometimes the old ways are the best ways.
I mean, yeah, I've been blessed enough in my life to have met a lot of really unique individuals. I got to meet a Buddhist monk in an airport in Japan, and it was just, I don't know, talking to him was almost eye-opening. No. But talking to him was almost eye-opening. And then, I've had a friend who used his ability to fly helicopters to live all over the world. I've known other people who took crazy risks with their lives because they were doing it for everything that they loved. And I realized that people can still create stories that we're going to want to remember, that we're still going to want to talk about, or maybe even argue about. But in order to make a story that's really crazy or worth remembering, it seems like people have to risk a lot. They have to let go of things that in order to have the unique life, you can't always live by the rules of society.
Yeah, you need to be something different in order to get people to talk about you.
I mean, and sometimes that's honestly for you to choose that path. It might be harder, but you're doing it either because it's the best thing for you. Maybe it's the best thing for everybody. And sometimes it's literally just the best thing for you and the worst thing for everyone else. Which kind of brings us to our 2 stories today, which is Charley Parkhurst and
Amy Bock.
And they're going to be 2 of the most interesting people I've ever heard about who decided to tell everyone else to screw off and that they were going to live their life their way.
They've got some unique stories coming up, so it's going to be very interesting today.
So I'm going to tell you about One-Eyed Charley.
One-Eyed Charley? Mm-hmm. All right.
But I want to start at the beginning because that's where our stories start.
Yeah, you don't need to tell them where they get interesting.
Yeah, right? So actually, Charlotte Darky Parkhurst was the youngest of 3 children born to Mary and Ebenezer Parkhurst in 1812 in Lebanon, New Hampshire.
Oh, God.
Now, Mary and Ebenezer had their children in quick succession, possibly could call them Irish triplets. Maria was in 1810, Charles in 1811, and Charlotte in 1812.
They did not waste any time.
No. And so, unfortunately, Mary ended up dying on the 27th of December in 1812 at the age of 24 or 25. Her son, Charles, followed on the 7th of February in 1813 at only about 3 years old. So normally I would suggest that it would be the wear and tear of popping out 3 kids in succession that probably caused poor Mary to pass away. But seeing that little baby Charles followed quickly, more likely it would have been something like consumption or some other random disease that came through.
The killer of every character in our story.
And then consumption. So I'd hate to speculate either way because I just don't know. And that's the thing with Charlie's story is that it's just full of mystery and a lot of people make a lot of guesses. What we do know is these deaths left 34-year-old Ebenezer alone with 2 little girls. I mean, I'm talking you got an infant and you got a toddler. It probably sucks.
I mean, yeah.
So, as one may have guessed, there's not a whole lot of information about a typical middle-class little girl in the 1800s, like being stored in historical records. So, Again, we're going back to guessing what might have happened. But the typical story you might hear about Charlotte is that Ebenezer took the 2 girls to an orphanage where they were raised. I want to play devil's advocate here.
All right.
And play the other side of the court because I could not find any record of her being placed in an orphanage.
Well, it is 1812, so.
And records go away, or things catch on fire, or I just don't feel like paying money to pull up records on systems.
All of those.
So if you can find it that she's gone to the orphanage, please send me. Like, I would love to see that, and we will fix it on here. But I'd like to say what I did find was, you know, her mother was an only child to a captain, and both her parents ended up living well into their 70s. So I don't see necessarily why Ebenezer would have had to drop off the girls at an orphanage. There was family to care for them. She was an only child, so they could have done it. Also, Ebenezer remarried for a second time to a lady named Lucy Cushing in 1817 when Charlotte would have been 5 years old. So at some point he remarries, and that means, which is typical for men who have lost their wives and have young children, you marry and she can take care of the children.
Yeah.
He actually ended up having 3 more children with her. And Ebenezer would actually eventually become a deputy sheriff, a probate judge, a coroner, director of the poor, and the county registrar. So he would have been considered a really prominent guy. I don't think that kind of person could get away with just dumping your kids in an orphanage.
Unless you burn all the records.
Unless you burn all the records. He even gets written about in a book in 1880 about prominent men in that area. But either way, we know that in 1824, at age 12, Charlotte ran away.
Huh.
So she disguised herself as a boy, and she began going by the name Charlie. Easy to think of, Charlie.
It's
Charlotte.
a nickname. I mean, you never read Firestarter by Stephen King, but the main character in there, her name is Charlotte, and she always goes by Charlie. It's a common thing.
Okay. I mean, it makes sense to me. And here's the only thing about that. That is what makes the orphanage story so appealing, is it gives people an excuse or a reason as to why it would have been easier for her to run away as a little boy. Like, why would you want to run away? Well, you're in an orphanage. Answer there. You know, it would have been easier to get little boys' clothing. It would have been easier because her hair would already been short, because orphans had like little bowl cuts to just control everyone's hair.
And
lice and all that nonsense. Like, you don't care if a little girl looks like a little girl. It's an orphan. But honestly, like, and that helps the idea that she's in an orphanage, because I can't imagine a young girl at the age of 12 running away from a judge's or a sheriff's home and them not trying to look for her. So who knows? I don't know. Somebody help me. It could be either way, and Devil's Advocate didn't help me at all.
No.
But Charlie ends up being discovered in a barn belonging to a stable owner all the way in Worcester?
Worcester?
Worcester.
Yeah.
Is that how they say it?
It's Worcester.
We went to Worcestershire.
It's Worcester. It's Worcester.
Worcester. Massachusetts. So anyways, we just lost about like 30 people ever listening to us again when I tried to do that, huh?
At least you have to pronounce Lemonster. You would never been able to know how to say that one.
So she's found in Massachusetts by the owner of these barns, and his name is Ebenezer Balch.
Oh,
and
so she just has a thing for guys named Ebenezer, apparently.
yeah, things like for her dad.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So he finds what he thinks is a little boy hiding in the stables, and initially just tells him, like, go on, get out. But instead, he ends up providing little Charlie with work, cleaning out stalls, caring for the horses, and he seemed to really take a liking to the young man and saw that he was a hard worker and wanted to give him a place to live. So Balch noted how well the kid worked with horses and decided to teach the very astute young Charlie how to drive a carriage with horses. This is not an easy task.
Yeah.
He started teaching him with one horse, and then two, and then up to a set of four, and finally a whole team of 6 horses, which was considered incredibly difficult, very rare, a unique skill for people to be able to do. Like, controlling 6 horses with your just reins, one person, that's crazy.
It's like a 6 horsepower engine.
And not to just that, but like the roads, they're not freaking roads.
No,
like,
they're
they suck.
dirt paths.
We are so lucky with the infrastructure that we have today. But yeah, there were muddy dirt paths, maybe sometimes stone, which I don't imagine is much better anyways.
No, not at all.
So by the time Charlie turns 20 in 1832, he's considered one of the best drivers in the Northeast. Like, people literally request him by name to be their driver. It's really an honor. Like,
Yeah.
Those guys are very much respected. And so the main source of travel at this time is by foot, by carriage. If you're lucky, maybe a train. But there's no automobiles. And, you know, if you're going a long ways, you want someone to get you there safely, right?
Yeah, of course.
So most likely Charlie would have been driving a Concorde coach, and it had a reputation for being really sturdy and very roomy. It's renowned for its strength and its ability to keep passengers dry while floating across flood-swollen streams.
Ah, the Oregon Trail. You gotta ford the river.
Yeah, this was just like in the Northeast, so fuck that shit. I hate it.
It's cold and foggy and...
It sounds terrible. I mean, can you imagine someone trying to give you across like a bridge and they're like, well, it's kind of swollen, so hopefully we don't get swept away. Look how well the water doesn't get in the carriage. Like,
that's not what I want. I don't want to have the driver being the salesman. I'm already in the damn thing. You're not going to change my mind.
Did you ever wonder why people never traveled much back in the day? It's because it sucked. So the body of the coach could weigh nearly a ton or more. It rode on thick leather belts called thorough braces. So it was just these, lines of leather. That's it. Like cradling it so it would more or less rock.
All right.
And wouldn't suck so bad without like just hitting on like tough, I don't know, wood.
Yeah, I think they're all wood at that point.
So at the front and back of the stagecoach were leather boots where you would keep your luggage or the mail that was traveling or the lock boxes.
We're using boot here the same way that Brits use it for trunk of a car. Mm-hmm. So for those of you who, remember that we won the war and we don't need to use their slang, we're using it for a minute.
And what I was really surprised about is that these coaches could fit about 9 people inside. It was not going to be comfortable, but you had about 3 benches and you basically armed everybody and sat together, and there were rules. There were rules like maybe try not to cuss so much, and hey, like, don't get drunk, but if you bring alcohol, you're expected to share, and
don't make eye contact.
Right? Like, it's just me scusi. What was also neat that I didn't know about it was that these carriages, they didn't have like beautiful glass windows like you see in all the movies. That was really impractical on something like this because they were more likely to get warped and break, and who wants broken glass? So the only way to keep out the dust, the dirt, the rain, all this crap getting kicked up in the road was by having these leather patches you could drop down over the window.
Yeah, like curtains.
These things rock so much like a freaking ship that people literally got seasick on them.
That's fun. I'm not going to get on one.
You could ride on top of the coach, but typically that was the roughest, dirtiest spot you could pick. And these people were actually called hangers-on.
All right.
And so that's where that term comes from.
That's when you're waiting for the next flight anyway at the airport. I think we still have those people. If they could, they'd ride on the damn wing of the plane.
Well, it was so common that they were like often suggested to these people that they not put like pomade in their hair because the dust was just only going to get so thick in there that they weren't going to get it back out. So basically, you had 3 typical types of tickets sold for a stagecoach, first, second, and third class. First class meant you got to ride inside the whole way.
Hooray!
Yay! Second class allowed you to ride inside, but on rough spots, if the driver said get the fuck out, you got out.
Still not so bad.
And then if you were third class, you were expected to get the hell out of the carriage when told to, but you were also expected to push when needed.
I don't want to ride third class.
So it wasn't as glamorous as all the movies made it out to be.
Yeah, especially then you have bandits running around on horses and taking you for all your money. I've seen Westworld. I know how it works.
So Charlie, again, being like requested by most people, he was really good at what he did, and he knew it. So Charlie stayed with Balch through 2 moves westward. First, they moved to Rhode Island, not too much of a move.
That's south and not actually probably east from Worcester, but whatever.
Cool. So then they moved more west to Iowa. So
that one's west, yeah.
That's cool.
I don't know why you go to Iowa, though.
It was the new frontier.
People in Iowa don't want to be in Iowa.
Well, they did when they first got there, I guess. Eventually, Charlie would apply for the Overland Stage Line Company, and he had an interview with the owner, the Stagecoach King himself, Ben Holiday.
Ooh.
I mean, it's big shit. Like, it's a big deal. This guy had his fingers in so many companies for transportation that he was worth probably millions, I would say. So Ben Holiday selected several men to come before him during an interview, and his main question to all of them was, how close could you allow the stage to get to a 1,000-foot drop and be sure the passengers would be safe?
That's a big drop.
That's a huge fucking drop.
I don't want to be near that.
It's very typical, actually, of driving a carriage in the West near cliffs.
Yeah, I mean, I've seen the movies where they're all like running from Indians, but
well, and so it was a very realistic and typical question for him to ask. And as is typical, you suddenly had men vying for one position, and they all start one-upping each other. So you got one guy, he starts yelling, 2 feet. Another guy starts screaming 5 inches. Another driver boasted he could drive the stage with half the wheel hanging over the edge.
Yeah, I don't want to be on that guy's stagecoach.
Yeah, neither did Charlie, because Charlie turned his back and he started walking away and just muttered, I'd stay as far away from the edge of that cliff as the hubs would let me.
That's smart.
Ben Holiday called back, you're just the man I want. because everybody else is a fucking idiot and you do not risk property. Charley was offered the job. So in 1849, Charley's friends James Birch and Frank Stevens moved out to California and consolidated several stage lines into the California Stage Company. Charley, who would have been roughly around 37 at that time, followed them to work as a stage driver where he, I keep sticking with he because that's how he was living.
Yeah,
nobody, not a single person outside of Charley knew any better than that. So I call him a he. So he earned himself a reputation as one of the finest whips in the West. To get there, he sailed from Boston to Panama. Then he crossed overland to catch a boat out of Panama to go up to California.
Oh, yeah, it's right before the Panama Canal was put in, so the
Yeah, you
only
want to
way
get
you could
anywhere.
do is
It's
across-
a freaking nightmare.
Yeah, you'd have to either go down past South America or you'd stop in Panama and ride across.
So while in Panama, Charley tells John Morton, who's another wealthy owner of another shipping company, quote, "I aim to be the best damn driver in California." So Morton offered Charley a job. Like, he must have been damn well believable.
All right.
So in town, stagecoach drivers were held in high esteem for their skills. But in the Wild West, like, even more so. Like, you were one of the most well-respected people in town, and on the road, you were worth more than the millionaire sitting next to you. Typically, they earned about $125 a month, plus room and board. A driver had to be outside on the front of the coach through all kinds of weather, and they were expected to get their clientele there safely along with their luggage and the mail, and basically, they were the first line of news to travel.
Yeah, it's the quickest way to get word from one side to the other.
Yeah.
No telegrams.
So often they drove over paths that were barely roads, and they had to carefully navigate those cliffs we were talking about with those sharp drop-offs. So once, a passenger asked how Charley could possibly see the road through all the dust. And Charley's response was, quote, "Smell it. Fact is, I've traveled over these mountains so often I can tell where the road is by the sound of the wheels. When they rattle, I'm on the hard ground. When they don't, I generally look over the side to see where she's going." I hate that answer.
Yeah, I don't care for that one much.
But think about it. You got a team of like 4 to 6 horses beating their hooves like directly in front of you. You got so much fucking dust. You're not seeing anything.
Yeah, you're just kind of hoping for the best. But, I mean, it's that same type of thing where, like, you know, even if you're not in the best of sorts, you can still tell your friend how to drive from one place to your home if you want to. That's probably what this is, you know?
I can't. I know that most people don't know my friend Chris, but when my friend Chris came down to visit, I decided to take him out for a night, and I got a little too drunk, and evidently my directions on the way home was just keep going east. Just keep going straight. And he was like, eventually we got to the beach, and you said keep going, and there was no more going.
Yeah.
I'm a mess sometimes. Anyways, so a typical driver would be called a whip, and you would see them in town wearing a wide brim hat, fine leather duster, and really thick gloves. And what would never be missing was their whip itself. To most drivers, it was worth its weight in gold, and one never left it or borrowed it out.
Yeah, it's your
It's
whole
like
means of...
it's a piece of their body,
Yeah.
you know? Typically, it was kept really well oiled to keep it really supple, and it was never leaned against anything in fear of warping it. And basically, these things are still kept in museums today because they're so fancy. Like, they're so well crafted and beautiful that the designs of them are very rare. They were typically anywhere between 11 and 12 feet long, and they would only reach the middle team of horses. So a true driver hardly used his whip, unlike what you saw again in most movies where it's like, yeah, snap, snap. In fact, most drivers were pissed about how they were shown in movies. They honestly said we would never do that. Like, these are our horses. They're, supposed to be well treated. Yet alone, you wouldn't want to wake up passengers or scare passengers, yet alone scare your fucking horses. Like, it wasn't in your best interest to go all crazy with these things. A true driver hardly used his whip at all. So they could handle up to 3 pairs of reins in one hand of 6 horses, while using their other hand to either crack that whip or most likely be using it to control the brake line. Yeah, so now think about 37-year-old Charley driving a team of 6, as he often did, 3 pairs of reins in one hand and the brake in the other.
Yeah.
And he's going to get you there safe, because never once did Charley hurt any passengers, and everyone always got there safe. So Charley was actually known to be able to use his whip to strike the cigarette from a man's mouth with one crack.
That's a neat skill.
These guys were really skilled with their whips, hence why they were called that. Like I said, it is a piece of them. So if you want to actually ride beside Charley or pretty much any other driver, not only did you have to ask them, but most likely you would even have to go to the station manager and request the spot ahead of time. And if the driver told you no, you didn't get to argue. That was it. Get the fuck out. You don't get to sit here. You don't get to run up and call shotgun.
Yeah.
Like, they are the bosses. Same went for the passengers, like we said before. Get down and push. Like, you have no choice. So Charley, at 37, fit into this group like Rouge in a whorehouse. Like, it was his bread and butter, man. He lived this life, and there was never one question of Charley ever being a woman. Charley was thin, and he was wiry. He only stood about 5'6". He did have some quirks. He always wore his gloves, which most people didn't do, probably to hide his smaller hands, which, if you're a man and you have small hands, you'd hide them too.
Yeah.
So, people excuse that kind of stuff. When he chose to talk, he did have a higher pitched voice. But again, you don't pick on the man who's one of the best drivers in the West. And honestly, he chewed tobacco constantly. So you think of a man in those fine clothes with that beautiful whip, who's short as hell and chews tobacco. And according to his companion, he outswore, outdrank, and outchewed even the Monterey whalers.
That's saying something, because you get those people on the boats and they just don't fucking care.
Yeah, that was Charley, and he did not care. That was his life. He lived the way he wanted to. So soon after his arrival in California, Charley had an accident in which a horse kicked him in the face, and he lost use of one of his eyes.
Uh-oh.
Hence, we get One-Eyed Charley. And he begins wearing an eye patch, and not only are people calling him One-Eyed Charley, but they're also calling him Cockeyed Charley. Another incident actually occurred where Charley ended up rolling a empty stagecoach and ended up hurting his ribs. And that was it. He just treated, I banged in my ribs.
Yeah.
But these mishaps were far outweighed by his real abilities. Charley was said to be so good that he could drive over $50 left lying in the road with both his front and back wheels.
Huh. I can't even do that with a damn car.
So like $50, think of like
a silver dollar.
Yeah, a silver dollar, like a very big round quarter, about twice the size of a quarter.
If you guys haven't seen a silver dollar, please go to the freaking bank and get one.
Yeah, it's called 50 cents, and it's nice.
Yeah.
But, most people can't do that with their car. She could do it with those thin wheels,
Yeah.
Charley had a lot of really crazy stories that were almost mythical in size about his skill and what he managed to accomplish. So, on one occasion, while Charley's driving a team through a really heavy storm, they're going over a bridge, and Charley realizes that the storm has caused the river that they're going over to swell, and it's starting to flood and hit the bridge. So, partway over the bridge, Charley felt the bridge start to give away beneath the stagecoach, and he sped the horses forward and hit solid ground just as the bridge was swept away into the river.
That's some Hollywood shit right there.
It's insane. On another trip, the animals got spooked, and the horses veered off the road, and Charley was tossed from the driver's seat, but he still held to the reins. So he's getting dragged along behind the coach until he can eventually get the horses to stop. The passengers are either so in awe or fucking terrified about what just happened to Charley that they all got together and got him a $20 tip.
And back then, that's saying something. if he's making $125 a month, that's a lot of tip.
Now, while holdups are a lot less frequent than your novelty Western book is going to tell you,
yeah,
it still happened. And on one of these routes in the early 1850s, Charley was held up by a gangster named Sugarfoot and his gang.
Ah, yes, the infamous Sugarfoot gang.
Infamous Sugarfoot. terrifying. Sugarfoot was named after the sugar sacks he wore on his feet in order to obscure his tracks. So, real whiz kid here.
Not actually a bad idea.
So he holds Charley up at gunpoint and demands he throw down the strong box. Charley is unarmed and angrily tosses the box down while vowing that he'd break even with them and that he would never be robbed again. So the next time Sugarfoot chose to hold Charley up, he raised a shotgun without reply and shot Sugarfoot in the chest.
There you go, Charley.
And then just drove off. It was like, didn't even say anything to him, just shot him. Sugarfoot crawled to a nearby cabin where he died from the wound.
There you go.
On another holdup, when Charley was ordered to put his hands in the air, he instead decided to take his whip and he cracked it across the thief's eyes and then continued on anyways.
All right.
And then another outlaw had the brilliant idea to hold Charley up by standing directly in the middle of the road and pointing his gun straight at Charley. So Charley chose to point his team directly at the man and speed them up before pulling back real hard on the reins and forcing the team to rear up just in front of the bandit. The man barely had time to leap out of the road before the coach started moving forward at a full gallop.
That's the way to do it, Charley.
Stop fucking with Charley.
Yeah.
Charley, like I said, never injured a single passenger. He always got them there safe. And often he'd cover over 60 miles in like a day. These things usually maybe hit 8 miles like an hour.
Yeah.
And he's crossing 60 miles. And often he'd even pick up a second shift, returning the stagecoach back along the same route through the night. But, you know, he did this for 30 years. And 30 years of this incredibly difficult, strenuous work, it wears on a person.
You can only imagine it would.
Yeah, and so Charley chose to retire from driving when he reached his 50s. And honestly, because he was starting to have a very common problem that most drivers started having, which was rheumatism.
Yeah, arthritis type of bullshit.
He was fucking hurting.
Yeah.
You're not supposed to use your bones and muscles in that way. And when we mistreat our bodies, eventually they don't work for you.
Yeah.
So Charley chose to settle outside of Watsonville, California, and turned his hand to a number of different types of work. He ran his own stage shop. He worked as a lumberman. He worked on a cattle ranch and was a saloon keeper and eventually a chicken farmer.
There you go. Lots
Hey.
of different odd jobs. Keep yourself busy.
Yeah, until you find the right one, right? Charley and his business partner actually joined the Odd Fellows Association, which is a very unique male-only club at the time, which is a non-political, non-sectarian international fraternal order of odd fellowship. It was founded in 1819, and it promotes the ethic of reciprocity and charity. Yeah, see, it's hard.
Yeah.
Everybody else knew what I meant. So shut up.
Reciprocity.
I'm drinking to that.
All right.
So, Charley lived by this belief, and he showed as much in his actions. So basically, the Odd Fellows was a very wealthy club, and it costs a lot of. It still exists today, and now they have female members. But even when it first started, it was a very expensive club to join, and they did a lot of really good things, like keep houses for old people and orphans, something that wasn't very common at the time. You know, you're supposed to give to charity and help people out. And so, since Charley was a member of this and basically lived his life this way, for instance, once there was a widow and her daughter in town who were about to lose their home to foreclosure, so Charley bought the place and just gave it back to them.
Smart move. Nice move.
I mean, smart, nice. He earned a lot of money from all his hard work, was a permanent bachelor, and could do it. But not everybody who can do those things do those things.
Yeah.
So, all of his life, Charley never slipped into letting anyone know his true identity, except perhaps one time. So, during the 1860s, while Charley's staying with the Clark family, he's doing his lumber work at this time, he comes home rip-roaring drunk one night. And as he returns to the house, the Clark mother saw him, obviously didn't want to deal with that nonsense, told her 17-year-old son, go put Charley to bed. So he does, but he comes back and he's saying to his mom, Ma, Charley ain't no man, he's a woman. However, This story only happened to come out after Charlie's death. No, this story was never in any newspapers. There were no rumors about any of this. So take it for what that is.
Yeah.
So in 1868, Charlie registered to vote. And basically that's 52 years before the U.S. gave all white women the right to vote. And a lot of people really like to celebrate him as being the first woman in California to vote. But the fact is Charlie was living as a man. And I don't think he cared whether or not women could vote. And it's unclear if he ever actually did vote. So he registered, but we don't know, like, we have no record of him actually voting at that time. So at the end of Charlie's life, the constant tobacco chewing seemed to take its toll on him. He was suffering from cancer of the tongue. And although doctors offered suggestions to help Charlie prolong his life, he chose to decline those. Most likely, their suggestions would have been something like removal of pieces of the tongue and jaw. Like, it was not going to be a very pretty thing, yet alone, who knew if it was even going to save him.
That's true.
Charlie chose not to go this route and let the illness take its course and decided to treat himself with the same medicine he would treat his horses with, saying if it was good enough for them, it was good enough for him. In his final days, Charlie had friends and neighbors who cared for him, including a 12-year-old neighbor, George Harmon. And Charlie left that little boy $600, and he also instructed all of his friends that he wanted to be buried in his grubby, everyday clothes. So what he died in, he just wanted to be buried in.
Yeah.
Charlie had no intention of ever letting his secret out. Unfortunately for Charlie, and in full love from his friends and neighbors, they felt like that was not respectable enough for someone like Charlie, who they loved, and they chose to wash and clean him when he passed away on the 28th of December in 1879. And when they did so, they discovered that Charlie was anatomically a female. And everybody was in shock, including his business partner of 40 years, Frank, who was so upset at hearing the news that, quote, he didn't stop swearing for 3 days.
He's probably more upset that he got fooled about it.
Yeah, I mean, okay, think about it. How would you feel if you spent like 40 freaking years with somebody that's your business partner, that's your buddy, that's your best friend, that's someone you trust? How did you not see that?
Yeah.
How the hell did you not see that? Like, it would just blow you the fuck away. You never... What?
Yeah, exactly.
That's the answer. What? And then you walk out. What? What did he say? He said what? And then he just started drinking heavily. So, you know, despite the fact that the Oddfellows Association at the time did not permit female members, they actually overlooked this for Charlie, and they buried him with full lodge honors in the Oddfellows Cemetery. Charlie's burial is currently located in the Pioneer Cemetery in Watsonville, Santa Cruz, California. He's 6 rows back from the Freedom Boulevard facing the street. And that's One-Eyed Charlie, who decided that he was going to be the best damn driver in California, and was.
I like that. That's a good story.
I find it so exciting that, you know, somebody could decide to do something with their life and just did it. Charlie never hurt anybody. Charlie never did any bad, and I can't imagine he was unhappy.
No, he's just living the life he wanted to live.
There is a rumor after his death that somebody found a baby red dress and baby shoes. And then the doctor claimed that he could tell that Charlie had had a baby at some point.
Yeah, I don't think that's true.
Yeah.
Based on Charlie having the secrets of, like, even when he's dead, to, like, just leave me in the clothes I'm in.
Yeah. He's been doing this since he was 12 years old.
Yeah, he's not going to have a kid.
What'd they find? Stretch marks? What if they found a dress? What if he actually, like, you know, met somebody or something happened on the road and he kept some, you know, a memento?
Yeah.
I hate when people want to, like, they want to be like, no, he's still a woman, still had a baby. You know, they want to take what he wanted to be and they want to twist it, and I just don't want to do that.
Yeah, so we'll leave that as it is.
Yeah. And I think Charlie is just really cool. So kudos to Charlie.
That's a good story. That's a really good story.
Yeah, I think he's pretty great. So what about yours?
So, all right. My story, we've got, it's a little bit different, but kind of similar in the same way. We've got Amy Bock. And Amy Bock is one of those people, like Charlie, who didn't apologize for who she was or what she was, really. You know, she lived life the whole way she wanted to. Just did her thing her own way.
Okay.
Born on May 18th in 1859 to Alfred and Mary Ann Bock out in Tasmania.
Ooh,
Amy,
Australia, mate.
Amy would eventually move with her family to Victoria in Australia. Her father owned a photography business and was able to move them around. So she ended up in Australia in 1867. The first, 8 years aren't all that interesting, so we're just going to kind of breeze by that.
Was she at Wallaby Way?
Oh, God. No, they weren't in Sydney, so... So like I said, her father owned a business. Unfortunately, her mother suffered from manic episodes, either based on depression or, according to one author, would be declared as bipolar in today's world. She was a bit insane and kind of figured that she was actually Lady Macbeth from Shakespeare's play, not just an actress who played Lady Macbeth, but was Lady Macbeth.
What?
Yeah, just, she's got manic and depressive episodes. She's just a little bit schizophrenic, it seems.
So for years, she just paraded around in this, melancholy, bloodlust?
Apparently. And that kind of kept up with her for the remainder of Mary Ann's life. And in 1871, she's placed in an asylum, and she died there about 3 years later.
Oh, man.
And that puts us to having Amy at about 12 years old when she loses her mother. And
which is always really tough on a little kid.
it's not easy on anybody. And it was not only an embarrassment for the family, but also caused people to pay a little bit closer attention to Amy, because she had a very similar, unique personality. She showed signs of heavy mood swings. One moment she'd be very extroverted and she'd be highly focused and very happy, and then the next moment she'd become very introverted, and just kind of hold off from herself. And her mood swings are so weird that, for instance, at one point she was using her father's name at a store to purchase some books. And she'd just kind of wander through town and just randomly choose who to give the books to.
So she was just doing weird shit to entertain herself.
Maybe. I mean, it could be a little bit more, but we'll get, that'll kind of build with the story. It's kind of a harmless act, and her father, on one end, he's seeing it as harmless, on the other end, he's like, all right, that's definitely her mother in her. And it kind of made him a little bit worried. So he wanted to protect her, and when Amy turned 19, her father pulled some strings with his business connections and set her up as a governess over in Melbourne. Or I guess as the Australians would call it, Melbourne.
Melbourne.
I learned that one. It's not the same Melbourne as Florida. Unfortunately, the life of a governess was just too boring for Amy. Although she was well educated enough, she just couldn't help but go out and trick people and kind of throw some cons out. According to Jenny Coleman, who's the author I previously mentioned, Amy's basically just scamming the people she's working for. She's fidgeting with school attendance roles because her salary was dependent on how many students were in attendance. And it come to the points where Amy would end up lying about needing extra money for repairs for the building, for windows or doors. And she'd have a habit about lying on good credit to purchase goods that she didn't really need. She just did it because she could.
Which, in case anybody's confused, stores didn't used to be the way they are now. You didn't get to, walk into a store with a cart and, go pick out whatever you wanted and wander around. You would come to a store, you would give them a list, they would go get all your shit for you, and you would either pay, or because you're one of the limited number of people in town, you put it on credit, which you would come in later on and just pay your total sum for, the month.
Yeah, I'm not getting paid till next week, let me pay for you then, and then it's an honor system in a way.
Yeah, and so in order to go into a store and get something on credit and then just walk the hell out was very, super easy until the store owner starts picking up on, you're not fucking paying me.
And this is kind of part of the system that Amy would kind of dupe in a way. She figured that if she was smart enough to fool you, she was smart enough, or it was worth scamming you. As a result, that's a lot of what she ended up doing. In 1884, Amy turned 25 years old, and she found herself facing charges for acquiring goods under false credit. This whole going into a shop, lying about what she, or not necessarily lying about what she needs, but lying about where the credit line is, and then getting the goods and doing God knows what with them, eventually caught up to her. As the crime keeps going up, you'd think it scares her straight, but it really doesn't. It kind of adds more of a thrill to it for Amy, and she eventually leaves Australia and moves to New Zealand with her father and his new wife. And, again, this isn't a restart for her. She just wants to move somewhere else. And this is where she starts her biggest con as becoming New Zealand's most famous con man.
Oh, really?
So it's another story very similar to Charley in that regards. but, maybe not as heroic, let's call it. At one point, she traveled to Christchurch and went under the false name of Miss Lang. She visited some local stores and started purchasing quantities of items on credit again, her typical MO. She told store owners that she was a governess for the magistrate of Kaiapoi, a gentleman by the name of Mr. Caleb Whiteford. She explained the goods would be paid for when they arrived at his house. However, Amy intercepts these goods at the train station and took them for herself. It wasn't long before the gig was up. Amy was apprehended and sentenced to a month of hard labor for being a little crooked thief.
Damn, you gonna go break some rocks.
Yeah, I don't know if that's how it was, because I know they weren't stamping license plates. And as it goes, between 1887 and 1904, that's, nearly 20 years? That's like, I can't do math, I don't care. 17 years. Amy was arrested and charged at least 10 times. Whoa. And she'd serve a total of 7 years in prison between that window.
That's crazy.
Yeah, she's doing a lot of different things. And most of it's just like, petty crime. She's just a petty criminal a little bit. The local papers, though, found it fun. They had Amy providing a lot of fodder for their papers. One paper wrote after a trial that she had the perfect mania for what she called shopping, which consisted of ordering goods she did not require and she couldn't pay for. On all hands, astonishment is expressed that the girl had thus far convinced to keep out of the lunatics asylum. As it was, her mother was a confinee of one of these systems.
Damn, son. If you could picture me, I want to run around in a circle going, ooh.
Yeah, just, you can picture. I think it happens in Adventure Time.
Fuck. She crazy because her mama crazy.
But she's smarter than her mom, is what they're saying. Another wrote that much sympathy has been felt for Miss Bock, as her mistake is believed to have been caused by more of a hereditary misfortune than criminal intent.
Damn.
So they're definitely saying that she's her mother's kid.
I want to see these guys in a rap battle today.
And, frankly, Amy kind of plays it up, and she's like, the malady from which I suffer, it's been passed down to me, and only God and myself know the trials and troubles I go through, this horror I go through every day when I'm fighting against it.
Oh my God, Amy.
Knowing about it, but then losing year after year to it, overpowering her more and more. Every time she's released from prison, though, or, jail or holding, she'd go get a respectable job. Music teacher, governess. Governess, for those of you guys who don't know, is just like a school teacher in like a schoolhouse for a local population.
Or sometimes like a personal family.
Yeah, a personal family and their personal acquaintances. But it's not necessarily a big school teacher like we know today, but kind of like one of those little house on the prairie type of school teachers. But eventually her desire to pull another con just for her amusement would get the best of her. And they'd get more and more ridiculous as time went on. Once she decided to visit every funeral home in town and go through purchasing the most extravagant coffin, for her dear old dead mother.
And that lady that died like 20 fucking years ago?
Yeah, but she'd purchase a bunch of different caskets, and she'd start writing checks out. And the way the system worked back then is you have a check, but you're trying to write for the amount, and you still want some walking around money, so she'd actually gain money off of this, because she'd be writing bad checks, and they'd give her change for the check. And eventually, a few weeks later, a bunch of caskets are arriving at this family's home, or at the train station, addressed to this family, and everyone in the family, everyone's healthy, and no one's really close to dying, so creepy.
And what was the purpose?
Because she could. She's probably sitting around waiting at the train station and just laughing her ass off when those things arrived.
I kind of love her.
Another time, Amy managed to talk her way into owning a chicken farm because she could. And she even convinced the Salvation Army of all groups to give her a loan to buy a 6-room house.
God, this woman's tongue is like gold.
She's just, she's got a knack, for playing the desperate gentlewoman who never cursed or drank. She's just a very good lady. She had forged documents that kind of backed up her claims.
That's like the very first rule of being a con man.
You need to have a backstory.
No, well, you have to have a backstory, right, that you stick to. But a second rule of being a con man is that you're not supposed to drink. Even with, you could sip, but you should never lose, your awareness of all your lies.
I think they actually talk about that in Lost. There's a character who's a con man, and he'd rob people, and he would, have enough to drink, but he would never drink. Just enough to make everyone else feel like he was doing his thing.
Comfortable, and you're supposed to listen.
Yeah.
And, be that sweet person. And, yeah, she's, your typical con man. She knows the rules.
Yep. And, she has enough of the backstory, but her crimes always seem to fall apart in the same way. And she never kind of really thought far enough ahead, or frankly, she got bored and didn't want to keep with the charade and move to the next story. Eventually, these pranks weren't really enough for Amy. Attention to detail was kind of something that she lacked, and that's what got her caught. But, she started setting her sights on something bigger at this point, and she wanted to do the ultimate scam.
Yes.
In 1907, Amy turned herself into the prominent bachelor Percival Redwood. Percival Redwood. We're going to continue to call him Percy.
Ooh, Percy.
Ooh, Percy. So...
Wait, that sounds like a guy.
What?
Percival.
Because it's a man's name.
Oh, she's turning into a man.
I told you she's going to be the most famous con man.
I just thought that was like a term.
It is, but it's 2018. We have to use con woman now. Or con person.
Or Connie. No.
That's a news anchor. So, Amy/Percival starts donning men's clothing, cropping her hair, and moving into a boarding house in Nugget Point, and began cultivating a fabulous backstory to all her new friends as Percy. And, Percy was a gentleman, so Percy was very, very dapper, the son of a wealthy Canterbury sheep farmer.
Oh, what else could you be?
Wearing dandy clothes and smoking a pipe. And, just kind of like walking around extravagantly and being gentleman. And
okay.
I'm kind of looking for the term like metro right there, probably, because
she's like a fancy boy.
Yeah, she's super fancy. It also helps that Amy kind of has more handsome masculine features than like delicately feminine beauty.
Which we're gonna post pictures of both these people.
Yeah, we'll post these on the Instagrams and the Facebooks and the Googles. Her eyes are a little bit droopy, and there's something just slightly off. But her jaw is strong, especially when she has her hair cut short, which easily makes her kind of stand out as a man.
Yeah, it doesn't sound like she was very pretty, but a woman who's not very pretty could be very handsome.
Right. And, Percy is very quick to garner friends by being the type of person who passes out gifts and being there to help his friends when they need something. One such friend describes him to a news reporter saying that, quote, or paraphrasing because I'm not going to direct quote, he was an alright chap. He had plenty of money, and if you wanted anything to buy, he was the boy to do it for you. The essence of all that was good and kind. He appeared to have to do good for people. And his affability and obliging nature made us all really like him.
He gave me shit, so he was cool.
Yeah, he gave me stuff, so it was cool. And,
it was cool.
It was using this kind of friendship that whenever Percy happened to fall on misfortunes, people were willing and eager to help him out and kind of give him some money. For an instance, he apparently lost his wallet on a fishing trip, and a local woman decided to give him her entire life savings.
The hell?
Until money could be sent to him.
Like, that's just really unnecessary.
I mean, depending on how big life savings are back then, but someone's exposed to a certain level of living, they need to keep living that way.
Like I said, it seems like this person has like a tongue of gold. They just talk their way into anything.
Yeah, I mean, it's just silver-tongued. Percy picked his residence with care, staying at the Albion House, which was owned by the wealthy Ottaway family. He introduced himself to their 30-year-old daughter, Agnes Ottaway. And within 3 months of meeting, Percy proclaimed his love for Agnes and proposed. And, the proposal was very eagerly accepted by the family. The prospective groom went through all the expected activities of being a groom, getting your hair cut, getting fitted for a suit, and no one seemed to think anything was particularly off with Percy. What did begin to unravel was all of Percy's stories about his wealth. And, all the loans that were being taken out by Percy were starting to catch up with him because he wasn't able to pay them back yet. The Ottoways were beginning to become suspicious that their daughter's future husband was not as wealthy as he was saying he was.
Yeah, that's their biggest problem.
Right now it is. In a desperate effort to ease all their fears, Percy starts receiving a letter from his dear mother, Mrs. Redwood.
Oh, just in time.
And it goes on at length about, the family's delight in the forthcoming nuptials, how Mrs. Redwood is relieved that Percy found love after his love of his life died 12 years prior. I think she drowned or something in the story.
Wait, so, like, she's just going on, like, oh, I'm so happy, and...
Percy found love, his last life, love died.
Oh, that's dramatic.
Just doubling down, and then
This is the best soap opera ever.
She, as in Mrs. Redwood here, ends the letter by saying that she's going to buy the newly married couple a house for a wedding present.
Mic drop!
So, we're just going to throw it all in on this one. And it temporarily relieved the Ottoways.
Hell yeah, you tell somebody you're going to buy them a house? Yeah, they must be wealthy.
However, it didn't relieve everybody in town because Percy was owing a lot of money to a lot of people. And, a lot of it he wasn't going to pay back. He couldn't, and he just wasn't going to.
Yeah, that's not Amy's deal.
Percy managed to... Yeah, that's small details.
I just can't see what she's trying to get out
of
this.
What we're going to do is we're just going to throw lies on top of lies here. And, Percy managed to console those other people by saying, the money will be here when the family shows up for the wedding. And obviously, Mom's going to buy me a house, so Agnes and I are going to be fine. Just more and more lies, just doubling down and burying this further. As the wedding preparations went forward, another letter from Mrs. Redwood arrived. This one sadly informed everybody that she wasn't going to be able to attend the wedding because it interfered with some other family situation, which I don't know what other family situations would stop you from going to your son's wedding unless it's your other son's death.
I think it is another wedding.
It might be. It might be that.
I mean, you're totally right. Like, who the fuck is like, I'm so excited. My son is finally getting married. Fuck this shit, I can't show up. I've got other things to do.
There's something else going on. I have no idea.
So sirens are going off to everybody.
Yeah, at this point. And by the time the wedding shows up, none of Percy's family shows up. Lawyers, however, had showed up, and they were questioning Percy on several incidents that concerned them.
Uh-oh.
There was suspicion that Percy was no wealthy son, and perhaps was no son at all. But news of this wedding had been published all throughout town and local areas. It was the big thing of the season. And they didn't want to, completely destroy Agnes by canceling the wedding and having this media coverage just humiliate her for the rest of her life.
Oh my god, she'd be mortified.
So the wedding was going to progress, but Mr. Ottaway had an addendum to that. And the wedding was going to stay, the marriage was going to stay unconsummated until Percy's mom showed up and gave them some money.
Which Percy was probably like, yeah, okay.
Yeah, and, this is, I'm just kind of Percy I don't know where she's going with this one. He is going with this one, but...
I don't know. Where is, how did he even imagine this was going to work?
And then, the day after the wedding, the family holds another conference. They call Percy to the conference, and they kind of are discussing that he needs to prove his wealth. It's time to shut up or get off, it's time to shut up or get out. And he managed to kind of get them to give him one more week to get everything in order.
Man, they really want that money.
And he's just doubling down, stalling for time. I don't know what he's trying to stall for time for, because what's he hoping to do?
Yeah, nobody's
keep
showing
stalling
up.
And then be 45 years old in an unconsummated marriage? Maybe, but who really knows? The strange story of the fabulous wedding gone wrong began to come out in rumors.
Obviously.
Rumors that it eventually reached the ear of a Detective Henry Hunt, who had dealt with Amy Bock many times over the years. Hearing the wild stories of unpaid debts and strange promises, Hunt's like, oh yeah, that's Amy right there. And, he made his way out to the Albion house and knocked on Percy Redwood's door. And as Percy answers, without missing a beat, Hunt's just saying, the game is up, Amy.
Ooh.
And at that point, Amy looked him right in the eye and was like, yeah, I guess you're right, as long as we do everything quietly, don't wake everyone up in the house.
Yeah, she knew she got.
Yeah. And Detective Hunt places Amy under arrest for the charge of fraud. And Amy, seeing that the detective knew everything, agreed to go with him and that she would plead guilty at the appropriate time. She knew she did wrong. She knew she's gotten caught now.
She's done this before.
Yeah.
She's been taken away. She just doesn't want a big fuss.
This just been borrowed time at this point.
Why didn't she ever just, take the money and run?
And I don't know. I mean, she just kind of... I think for her, it wasn't necessarily going after the money. It was going after the thrill of it.
How long can I fucking fool all these people?
I think so. And that's how the scam of the century fell apart. Well, scam of the century in New Zealand, I guess. But Amy was taken into custody, and the newspapers had a field day, even running out of copies to sell about the story of this con man who's a woman gone wrong. Amy arrived in court, and she carried herself with an air of masculinity, wearing a nice long jacket, her hands thrust into the pockets, just like a guy would, because women don't have pockets.
We do now, and we love them. That's why we show them off all the time.
Yeah, anytime you guys get dresses with pockets, yeah.
And it has pockets!
Exactly. And, true to her word, Amy pled guilty for the charges, which meant that this was never going to trial. Amy was charged with false pretenses and making a false statement under the Marriage Act of 1908.
Oh, damn, not the Marriage Act of 1908.
Right, that's what really gets people nowadays. And she's declared a habitual criminal and sentenced to 2 years in jail. The marriage was annulled, and Amy confessed that she'd only done it because, quote, she was tired of defrauding men. They are too soft and easy to work on. So
really? That's her excuse?
I mean...
I got tired of screwing over guys, so I thought I'd screw over
If you're a woman, I'm not trying to be sexist here, but men are very stupid people. Women could easily get anything they want out of a man with the right smile or right look. I'm 100% positive. So it's probably not that much of a challenge. And going against a woman is probably a bit more of a challenge. Women tend to be smarter and don't think with their other head because...
we only got one.
Yeah, you only got one. So Amy was released from prison in 1911 and eventually married Charles Christopherson in 1914. And this marriage wouldn't make it through the next year.
Huh.
Amy never managed to remain out of trouble. She's always kind of going back to her little fraud and little con acts. And her final court appearance was in 1931. And she's 72 years old. And that, like, young, spunky little trickster isn't really there anymore. She's kind of, like, starting to mature out and mellow out a little bit. And, you know, she admitted that she just couldn't help herself, that this was in her blood to be this kind of, like, trickster, liar, con man.
Hey, know thyself, huh?
And, you know, Amy passed away at the age of 84 on August 29th in 1943 after spending 16 years and 2 months of her life in prison. She's buried in an unmarked grave, and this is ironic in a way because she's the type of woman who went through a number of different personas throughout her life, and now she's just buried unmarked.
Wow, that's freaking crazy.
But that's, you know, you have some women who are pretending to be men for good reasons. You have other women that are pretending to be men just to fuck with people.
Yeah.
And, you know, it's just these
this
amazing...
is someone who really lived their life to full out just be entertained. Like, did not care. Like, as long as think something's funny, I'm gonna do it.
And that's what it was. You know, there's stories of Amy being in prison, and she's just kind of sitting there, just staring off into space, you know, obviously daydreaming, and then she would just start throwing her head back and cackling and laughing. And people would be asking Amy what's so funny, and she's just like, oh, it's just nothing. And, you know, it's clear that she's just kind of coming up with these schemes in her head while she's, like, locked up in prison. Like, what kind of goofy shit can I do?
And she did.
She probably found that casket thing hilarious.
I find it hilarious. Like, how messed up is that for a whole family? Like, excuse me, there's what now?
Why are there a bunch of caskets in different sizes? I don't like this at all. That's when you don't ever get back to sleep.
And, you know, we got a lot of our information for these two stories from some really good books, and I'm going to put pictures of them online, but I want to make sure that we mention them because they're owed their due. So for me, to talk about Charley, I was reading a book called Frontier Grit, and it's the unlikely true stories of daring pioneer women, and it's by Marianne Monson, and she does a fantastic job of breaking it up into a bunch of unique stories and, you know, just doing her research in general. And then, in Corey, his story and his research, he had this book.
Yeah, so we're using this one called Bad Girls, which is a number of different short stories collected by Jane Stradling. And it's a number of different stories of women who are just these bizarre people who just behave poorly. Then as well, there's also Dr. Jenny Coleman's book, Bad or Mad, which is written about Amy specifically. And that was another piece of the puzzle for this the research on Amy's story.
Anywho, we wanted to put out this quick episode, especially because it's around Thanksgiving, and we wanted to be thankful, especially to our listeners, for coming and listening to everything we put out. And we hope to see you again next week when we provide you yet another true crime story.
So if you guys haven't already, try to follow us on Facebook or Instagram or Twitter at SNAFU'd Podcast. And if you have any questions or comments or some stories you want to share with us, you can email us. And our email is snafudpodcast@gmail.com. And please leave us some ratings over on iTunes, Instagram, or Spotify,
iTunes.
iTunes, wherever you can leave ratings.
It
for
really
podcasts.
does make the difference. It's really, really important. I read every single thing you guys put up there, and I fangirl over you guys all the time.
Yeah.
So if you want to interact, again, send us a message on Instagram, and if you want to do us a favor, please, please leave us a review on iTunes. And until next week, stay safe and be thankful.
See you guys later.
Bye.